All right, folks, I think we're going to kick things off. Welcome. This is Evenings with Artifacts. This is our fourth year conducting the series. We're thrilled to have you back with us for our fall edition. Tonight, to kick things off, we are very excited to welcome Angie Turner, who is the founder of SOS Legacies. Angie tonight will be sharing her experience and her tips on how to create memorable life capsules. Angie, by way of background, for those who do not know her, she is very passionate about helping individuals and families preserve their histories in meaningful and lasting ways. Angie's a strong believer that everyone has a unique story to tell, and she is on a mission to ensure those stories are captured, cherished, and passed down through generations. Angie also has a number of very impressive certifications. First and foremost, she's a legacy preservation specialist. She's a level 1 digital storytelling facilitator. She is a photo manager. She's also certified in photo reminiscence therapy and guided autobiography facilitator. And she's an end of life and a grief doula specialist. She also happens to be a privacy advocate and a professional organizer. So, Angie, that is a lot of experience you bring to the table tonight. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you joining us.
Thank
Um,
you.
to kick things off, how we typically run evenings with artifacts, we do have a series of questions we'll be going through with Angie conversation style for those of you that are new tonight. We also invite you, if you have questions, please feel free to pop them into chat and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. If we don't have a chance to answer them as we go, we will save time at the end to ensure your questions are answered. And yes, I was just joined by my furry companion for tonight's evening's episode. So with that, Angie, are you ready for the first question we've got?
You bet. But I gotta say, I want to warn people in advance. I have a tendency to think faster than I speak, and so I hope I'm not fumbling through the answers tonight.
No, I think it's going to be, I'm super excited for the conversation. I've learned a lot in our back and forth exchanges. So I'm really looking forward to learning even more from you tonight. And I think, again, based on questions we got prior to this episode this evening, we've got some really, I think, a lot of folks who got questions about how do they do this? How do they approach this? So, with that, when we first started talking about this for tonight, you had mentioned kind of one of your passion projects right now is creating or helping families create integrated life story memory capsules. Can you walk us through what that actually looks like for a family or for an individual? And how do all these elements that go into the capsules, objects, photos, narrative, how do they come together?
Well, to start with, I say that the integrated life story memory capsule sounds like a really big fancy thing. And it doesn't have to be by any means. I think that the first thing that people need to understand is that it can look like anything that you want it to look like. Okay, so the basis of it is simply that we're trying to combine and integrate different senses so that we can strengthen the memory and the ability to recall it. So, I mean, it could look something like the box that someone keeps under their bed where they're collecting items through their life that are important to them that just get hidden away and they want to go to them when they have a special moment. It could be a trunk with separated boxes full of different memorabilia and stories and that type of thing. It could be a book, could be a time capsule or a memory capsule, so long as you are adding different sensory items to it. So it doesn't have to be big and fancy. It can be something very small and individual to you as well. So I think that's the first thing that people need to know. So, I mean, for myself, I haven't actually worked out exactly what I want my memory capsule to look like. I've been going through it because again, I get so excited about so many things that I kind of want to do everything. And I really need to focus. It's an issue for me. So I'm still trying many different things because I want to be able to share with my clients, my experiences with them. But as far as what I'd like to curate for myself, I'm still unsure yet.
Yeah.
I was thinking though, when I thought of the idea of a memory capsule, what kind of vision came into my head when I thought of that? And I kind of thought of I often go back to my guided autobiography where we're theme related, right? And so I feel like I was thinking, okay, let's if I took a theme, say health and wellness is one of the regular themes, and I thought, okay, so for in my life, for health and wellness, anxiety would probably be the number one thing that I've had to manage throughout my life. And so I thought, okay, what would I put together for a memory capsule for that theme? And I
Mhm.
thought, okay, the first thing that comes to mind with anxiety is I originally was having such difficulty with it that I actually became a professional organizer because of it, because I was looking to find ways to control my environment. And so I thought, okay, when I think anxiety, I think of a container that, like an organizing container, whether it's some type of Tupperware or a sectioned off, whatever, some type of organizing container is what I felt came through for me as what a capsule could be for that theme. And then I started thinking about items that I could put into it, and I was thinking, okay, uh, maybe something like lavender essential oils, because that was something that I would put on my pillow to help me, fall asleep when my mind was going, 100 miles a minute. That would be something I could put in there. Um, I was thinking maybe nail biting is something that I've always had issues with for anxiety. And so I thought, that disgusting stuff that you put on your fingernails to stop from biting it.
Like the no
So
bite or the, yep.
no, bite stop. I don't know what it's called, but whatever. I thought, okay, that would be another item, right? Because that's something that, triggers for me because had that on my fingers all the time trying to stop it. I failed miserably, but whatever.
I think every kindergartner can relate to that.
Yeah, and so I thought, okay, well, that's another sense type of thing, right? For
It's really
text,
multi-sensory. Like what I'm hearing, Angie, is that when you think about these capsules, it's not just one thing. Like you're going through
yes,
it's the smell, even for the nail biting, maybe there's a taste
a
associated with
taste, yeah,
memory. And you think about like oftentimes when I think of memory capsules and others, I'm always confounded. How do I get that taste in there? Like that's a very tough sense
it
to
is.
achieve, right?
It
So
is.
I
Yeah.
love how you're approaching this.
I mean, there's so many options, right? But anything that can trigger it for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How families focus. If you're working with a family and they want to go down this avenue and start doing a memory capsule, do you have any advice for maybe first timers? Like how do you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, how do you pick a theme? How do you get started on the first one?
I think you have to start with where your interest lies. So, I mean, as it's been, I've been helping families with their photo collection, right? So curating those photos. And then I'm helping in my guided autobiography, I'm helping people write their stories, or I'm taking their objects and I'm digitizing them. So, we're doing all these things separate.
Yeah.
And so everybody, I think, starts at a different place, right? Some
Yeah.
people will start with objects that trigger for them. Other people, again, are starting with a story. So I think it depends on where your interest lies, right? And so what triggers for you. And so depending upon what your interest is, I think that's where you should start. If you're writing a story, so like I think I'm trying to integrate with my guided autobiography classes now, encouraging more that they're adding photos in or memorabilia, other senses so that they can again strengthen the memories and start bringing things together. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that's a place to start. It's just picking something that you're interested in and working from there.
Speaking of kind of those tangible objects that can trigger those memories, from your perspective, why do you think that holding such a meaningful object, like a necklace, can unlock deeper emotional memory than simply storytelling alone?
Well, I am not a neuroscientist. However, through the photo reminiscence therapy training and stuff, I've learned a lot about how different senses actually activate different parts of your brain. And so that's where you can strengthen memories by having different senses coming in and combining together so that it will strengthen the memory, the emotion attached to it, as well as your ability to recall it later because you've got other triggers all coming into play together.
Mhm. And that's really, I think, the beauty of what you're working on in that capsule is the combination of so many different, they might be individual memories, but they make up a broader, like you said earlier, kind of time of your life or theme of your life or whatever that happens to be. Um, let's go back to photo reminiscence therapy for a bit, because I think people may be familiar with it, some may not be. But in what ways does your work in creating those memory capsules, working with all those different tactile objects and senses, how does, when you work with photo reminiscence therapy, how does that help enhance what you're adding to those memory capsules? And how does it help families connect across generations?
Well, I think to start with, again, back to the neural connections. With
Mm.
every connection that we make, we're strengthening these and we're creating more opportunities for connection with each other. So I think something that we can do with intergenerational connection is that we can include some of these younger, the younger generation in creating these. So whether that is looks like them sitting down and going through photos with you and talking about stories, or whether that looks like them helping record your stories that you've written. Or maybe they're doing the techie part where they're uploading stuff and trying to arrange things in artifacts or something along that lines, right? Where they can be a part of it and it actually there's a lot of research behind as well that having kids involved in family history projects is actually something that is beneficial to their well-being.
Yeah.
So kids that know their family histories are usually more have a higher self-esteem. They're more confident because they feel grounded and connected, and so
Yeah.
that allows them to be able to be themselves more and be more
Yeah,
connected to other people.
I've seen that research too, and it's fascinating when kids feel they're part of this community, like family first, but then it broadens out when they understand where did their family come from. It really is powerful to enable them to grow and to thrive. And it's great because to what you were saying earlier, if you have a teenager and you want to get them involved and they're super duper tech savvy, fabulous. Like hand them the phone, hand them an app and say, let's get scanning or let's get
Exactly.
talking and recording. Like it's magical when those things happen. And we had one of our members shared with us, she started telling her life story based on these objects. She was taking tangible objects, but she was working with her granddaughter. And it was amazing because her granddaughter, in her own words, like the granddaughter had no idea her grandma was really such a bad, we'll leave out the last word since we are recording this, but she had no idea, right? And it was only telling the stories like, Grandma, why do you have an 8 foot long python snakeskin in your closet? And then Grandma tells the story.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy. It's sometimes I think we don't always think to ask kids or grandkids. And sometimes it just takes a little asking, a little, like, hey, do you want to hear the story? Or hey, have you asked your grandparents about this? And they get involved. Um, so I'd love to know kind of what you've seen from your in working with intergenerational families, like how are you able to get them involved in the process? Are there specific questions or kind of steps or tips? Like how do you bring the family together to get this started?
I think I kind of like the idea of, say, universal themes, right? So if you would, it could be questions, right? It could be, okay, we're going to interview each other, right? And we're going to have like our five favorite things or whatever, like our favorite movie and our favorite, you kind of go down the list or whatever, and you're both answering the same questions
Yeah.
and having your own take on them,
Yeah.
which I think could be kind of fun. I think that also something I've also thought about is if they got together, say a teenager and, an elder, and they each were coming up with their own technology, right? So it would be like the teenager showing the elder how to use TikTok, while the elder is teaching them how to use a rotary phone, or just something that they have no experience with. And, kind of recording something fun like that, I think would be great for a capsule, right? So that you would have something that you can look at and other family members could do the same.
Yeah. And do you have any advice for families that they've gotten over the first hump, right? They've got the grandkids or the kids involved and they're now working on this. But any advice for those who they're trying to preserve their legacy? They're using this approach, but how do they help tailor it so that it really resonates with that next generation or even with two generations down with their grandchildren? Like, what should they or should you be doing now so that it's going to hopefully hit home with kind of generations to come?
Well, I think the first thing we need to remember is that they don't want all of our stuff. Like they don't want everything that we have, and they don't want to have to curate for themselves what they think might have been important to you.
Yes.
And so I think that's a big thing is that we need to curate our own legacy for them so that they can simply appreciate it instead of having to work their butts off trying to figure it out and the time and the money and the effort and all of that kind of jazz. So I think that for us, curating our own legacy also allows us to show them what we want them to know about us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they have their own view of us, but then you want to think, well, again, the snakeskin, this is what I want them to know. I want them to know that I was, that I was crazy or I was this or I was that. The things that you may not have had storytelling time about, or it's not something you chit chat about over the kitchen table, but it's still stuff you want them to know about you. And
Yeah.
so I think it's I think it's important to curate this stuff so that we are presenting what we want to present and not
Mhm.
having the expectation that they figure it out later.
Yeah. And I love your choice of the word curate. And I'm going to let folks know who are watching tonight. We did not rehearse this
Oh,
beforehand.
no.
So Angie's use of the word curate truly I'm so excited because if you are familiar with artifacts, it's a big word that we use. Because there was a fun fact, I think it was in 2024, the LA Times published an article that said the average home has over 300,000 items in it. And if you think about that, right? And then you think about one day kids or grandchildren having to figure out what is what and why does it matter? If you give them a curated memory capsule of maybe a half dozen to a dozen items per theme, oh my gosh, they now can understand your
Mhm.
story and what matters, and not just the I've got all this stuff and what am I supposed to do with it?
Well, and it alleviates guilt too, right? Because I think that a lot of times when people inherit this stuff, they're like, I can't throw it away because what if it meant something to them? What if it
Yeah.
was important to them? And they have this absolute gut-wrenching guilt about getting rid of stuff. And I think that if you have curated your own legacy and you've got directives and everything to say, this is all you need to worry about. Here it is. Go find it. These are the stories. You'll know what you need to know. The
Yeah.
rest of it, they can let it go and it's
Yes.
okay.
You give yourself permission to let it go.
Absolutely.
And that's a big for folks who don't know my story or background. I started Artifacts because my mother passed away almost now 9 years ago. And let me tell you, she had a lot of stuff. And as the eldest and only girl, I was the one that had to sort through it. And it was like, Angie, you're so right. It was one, the guilt of, oh my gosh, I can't let it go. It was my mother's. But then there's the reality of, oh my gosh, I live in an 1890s townhouse. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, there's not nearly enough space for our stuff, the kid stuff, the dog stuff. And now I have my mother's stuff. Like it physically cannot fit. You have to make hard choices. And I think the hardest part was that I didn't know what pieces she would have wanted us to keep to tell her story. She had
Exactly.
never curated it. And that, we talk all the time about objects can't talk, photos can't talk. Um, and I think that's an important piece too, Angie. I'd love to have you comment on is that as a photo manager, it's not just, yes, there's a lot of tangible items too. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, the photos are easy, right? It's got people in it. We all know who those are. But a generation or two, you may not know who that is. And the photo cannot tell you the story. So, do you have any tips for folks who may be dealing with not just a lot of physical items, but a lot of photos too? Like how do you curate that? How do you start kind of piecing it together to tell that cohesive story in your capsule?
I might not be a good photo manager by saying this, but honestly, I originally dealt with my own um, photo collection because I wanted to be able to experience what some other clients, and I'm only sentimental to a certain level, and then I'm actually fairly comfortable with releasing many things, right? But when it came to photos of my daughter, I actually it was the first time where I sat here and I went, "Oh my God, this is what people are talking about." Um, if I throw this picture of my kid in a garbage bag, I must be a horrible mom. Like that's just like you just can't do that. And I really struggle with that. And I was just laughing at myself. I thought, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And so I had to work through that. And then it was like, okay, getting rid of the picture is not throwing away my child. It's okay to do this stuff. Like it's not an omen, it's not any of that. It is simply saving space and appreciating and enjoying my daughter instead of, the 12th picture of her doing the same exact thing type of thing. And so, sorry, I might be getting off on a tangent again here.
Very
But
relatable, let me tell you.
yeah, it was truly the first time I understood what people were saying about not being able to throw anything out. Um, but as That's why I wonder if I'm a bad photo manager because at this point now that I've worked through that, I have no trouble getting rid of any photo. Um, Truly. And so for myself, I actually started curating as I was doing that process. So I was like, okay, is this meaningful to me? No, gone. And so eventually I started again curating things where I was like, okay, is there a story that goes with this photo? If it's just hey, this is Uncle John, okay, well, I'll have one picture of Uncle John and the rest can go. So that may not be as simple for everyone as I think I found it eventually. But again, to me, I know that my kid is not going to know 90% of the people in there. So I thought, I am going to start combining photos and stories. And if there's no story to the photo, I'm not keeping it because it's not going to mean anything to anyone beyond me.
Yep. And I love how you've approached that because it's so true, right? That you hear about people that have hundreds of thousands of photos and you add to that the 300,000 plus items and you're left with just kind of I feel almost like it must be like you're a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, right? Or the Natural History Museum. And you're just like, I only have so much display space for X number of items, and I can only display maybe it's like a 20th of the collection. And like, how do you decide what it is? And I love how you said earlier about giving yourself permission to let it go. That's probably really important, like in this, as you're processing and going through and starting to think about how do you curate these capsules. Like, not everything maybe belongs in a capsule. Is that a fair kind of way of looking at it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to be meaningful. And if it's not meaningful, it doesn't need to stay.
Meaningful and have a story. Those are the two key points. So as someone, let's talk practical for a moment, right? We may have some folks here on tonight who are just like, all right, like I am sold. This makes a lot of sense. I'm going to curate my stories, my belongings, my photos. And now again, like we said earlier, like pick a theme or pick a time in your life. But as far as like practical, like, all right, they've got their theme, they're ready to do this. What are the next steps? Like, how does someone physically start with the capsule creation?
Again, I think if they have to pick something. So like for me, it's easy for me to promote guided autobiography because I'm very passionate about it. I love it. And so for a lot of people, that's their first connection with thinking, I need to leave a legacy. And so a lot of people, that's where they're starting, is they're coming to a class and saying, I got to do something with these stories. I gotta create something here. And so that's where these people are starting. They're writing a story, and then I'm encouraging them to start bringing other things into it. It could be one story. It can be, like I said, picking a theme or picking a story, and then simply trying to find maybe two other, like I said, either a photo or a photo and a sound or just something else to bring it together. It doesn't have to be big, but start small.
Awesome. Angie, I'm going to pop the link to your site into chat. So, folks, if you're listening, you're like, I've got so many questions, but I want to take them offline, or I want to get started working with Angie, or whatever it happens to be. I want folks to be able to reach out to you directly too. And I think because a lot of the services you provide are really helpful. They can help people get over that first hump of, again, where do I start? I'm feeling overwhelmed. And having someone help with the guided autobiography. Could you, for folks that aren't familiar with what that is, could you share a bit more about that and how do you help families with those guided autobiographies?
So it started with Dr. James Beeren, started the guided autobiography. And so he decided on putting themes together as a way of people curating their stories. And because they're universal themes, then it's something that everybody will have a story to add, to put together. So you write each week, you write 2 pages on a theme. You've got prompts so that it helps you to get the juices flowing and coming up with what your story is.
And I really like the idea of 2 pages at a time, right? I think for a lot of folks, when you hear the word autobiography, you imagine some like tome
Exactly.
of 300 pages. And then again, that overwhelm sets in of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I am not a writer. I am not going to pen 300 pages. Like it goes this downward spiral. So I think it's beautiful where, again, like small, manageable chunks. That's probably another big takeaway for tonight. In addition to meaning and story and curation, it's you can take it bit by bit and not have to do it all at once. So you don't have to feel completely overwhelmed or feel that it's out of reach because it is very doable and achievable. Um,
And it's individual too,
yeah,
right? Like, I mean, one person's legacy can be completely different. Maybe all you want is some stories and photos, and that's good enough for you.
yeah,
And that's okay.
yeah,
Maybe it's just photos with some writing on the back of it, a little story on the back so people know what it is. That's
yeah.
okay. It's just figuring out what it is that's important, what you value and what you want to share.
Yeah. Those are key because I can attest firsthand, having not had that with my mother, I would have given anything, even for like a little, like you may think an incomplete sentence doesn't matter, but like 5 words, it would have meant so much to know, like, hey, don't toss this out. Fabulous. This stays in the family. Or this is a yard sale find. It can go.
And encouraging people to create these opportunities for memories as well. Like I said, for myself, the reason I actually started getting into photo management in the first place is from the death of my father. And so something that was big for us was, he would play guitar and I would sing. And this was our way of connecting. And I have no recordings whatsoever of my father playing guitar and me singing. Like there's nothing. And so that was a big thing. I was like, I don't want people to regret this. I want them to, create these memories. You can curate these things as you're going. It doesn't have to be, okay, this event happened in the past and now I'm curating that. It can be this family event is coming up. Let's put a capsule together based on our experience here. Like let's plan even. I mean, it's possible.
I love that, Angie. 'Cause another thing we say at Artifacts all the time is we're alive today. You do not want to be the next generation's family history project or the genealogy research project, right? Like you think about it, we do a lot of work with folks in the genealogy space, which I'm sure you do too. And it's amazing how much time and money the next generation will spend trying to figure out
Yes.
your life and your story. And meanwhile, for all of us tonight, we are here. We are in real life, as my daughter would say, IRL. Um, to Angie's point, if you have a family event coming up, now's a great time to plan and to do a capsule, or even to, if you don't finish a capsule, start a capsule. There is nothing wrong with starting and taking time. Again, you don't have, if Rome wasn't built in a day, these projects can take time and you can ask others for help too. Which brings me to my next question, Angie. Thinking that it's Family History Month, we're heading into the holidays soon enough. How can families turn this process into a shared activity? Something that you can either be done in person or virtually, kind of across generations.
I think that something that people can do if they're not in the same, if they're not going to be getting together for a holiday, something like that, that they can still do it long distance, whether it's you just need someone to be kind of in charge of it. I guess as the contact person, there's always that one family, that one person in the family who gets stuck with this kind of thing, right? But
The
you
family keeper, or maybe can we call them the chief curator?
fair enough, yeah. So I mean, there's lots of tech out there right now. Like I use Memory Keeper as well as ways of people, connecting together and uploading stuff to it, along with audio stories and videos and all that kind of stuff. And just as a centralized place where people can send things out. It could be something as simple as having, again, you send out a questionnaire to everybody and in the family it's emailed out to everybody and say, okay, this weekend if you guys can, put something together, whatever, and upload it to this site. And that can be a way of collecting things from people that aren't nearby as well.
Andy, while you're mentioning the questionnaire, I'm going to pop in the chat a link to our at Artifacts. We have
Mm.
almost 2 dozen free downloadable checklists. And they are a great resource if you are either remotely or together in person. You can pick a theme. We've got them themed from old photos to collections to even we call them infamous firsts. But, you know, as grandma and grandpa, have you shared some of your first, first house or first, whatever it happens to be, with those stories? They could be a great starting point. And as well, I mean, there's a plenty of other resources out there, but that's a fun one. I also want to quickly, we did have a question from Sharon, just a technical question. Will this be available for replay? She had to miss the first part. And yes, on our YouTube channel. And if you registered, you will receive the direct link to the replay as well, about 24 hours after we conclude this evening's discussion. So you will be able to replay this. Also, if you're still tuned in the whole time, but you want to rehear what Angie, her advice and her tips, you'll be able to watch this replay about 24 hours, so later tomorrow. All right, I didn't mean to cut you off, Angie. Sorry about that.
No,
Um, let's talk for a minute. I think there's so many, when we start first talking about this, like there's so many, I think, ways that there are different technologies out there. And if you want to use artifacts, there's ways you can preserve the histories, the stories behind the stuff, photos included. Um, so aside, like, yes, there's artifacts, there's also other tools. But when you look at those tools in totality, how do you find technology is able to support people in making these memory capsules?
I think the biggest thing is that when you're creating a physical capsule or a physical collection of something, only one person gets that. Right? So there's only one person gets those tactile, tangible things. And I think that something that's great that Artifact does fabulously is that it's a way that other family members can appreciate those items and those stories. And, you know, so you could have a photo of everything that's in the capsule, and a story that explains everything in it as well. And I think that's a great way that you can share that capsule with other family members who aren't going to be able to have the tangible items.
Yeah. And sometimes items may be too big to actually put in a capsule. And
Absolutely.
to your point, you can't divide them. And when I look back at it now, and it makes me laugh, but with my mother and her estate, there is a grand piano. You cut a grand piano into thirds or quarters. Like, good luck. It's not going to happen. And then it's pretty big. It has to go somewhere. So for us, the answer was, well, at the time we didn't have artifacts and we weren't aware of some of the other tools out there. But for us, it was taking a photo and playing one of her favorite songs, making a recording of her favorite song on the piano, and then finding an old photo of her when they first got the piano and kind of putting that together. And now, yes, I've artifacted that all together, and my
And
siblings
that's a
and I.
capsule right there.
Exactly. But like we can hear the music, we can see the photo. And then thankfully, I don't have to figure out how to put a grand piano in, 2,000 square feet of 1890s townhome. Not going to happen.
Exactly.
So yes, technology I think can definitely help with the sharing, with the curation, multimedia too. Like that's probably, if you think about how media has changed over the past 20, 30 years, went from VHS to DVD to now so much is cloud-based. But it's also beautiful because what used to maybe take up an entire VHS tape can now be a snippet that's easily shared and downloadable. And, the list goes on and on. And it's no longer dependent on, well, I have possession of the VHS tape.
Yeah, which for some families that can actually be a real issue, right? If there's, especially if there is, some discomfort, I guess, with some people who got the actual object, you're still able to appreciate it.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of looking ahead, right? Like we always love thinking like what's coming around the corner. So when you look at this field of where it's been since you started and kind of where it's going, what excites you the most about the legacy work that you're doing and where this you think this is heading?
I wish I could tell you because like everything excites me. Right? Again, back to that focus. I just I love seeing how many options there are. Like I said, for every single person can have their legacy their way, whatever that means to them, because the options seem to be endless. And I was at the last conference I went to, they had a virtual reality interviews. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is some cool stuff. So, you put on the VR glasses and you're
Uh-huh.
sitting right there with the person having a
Oh
conversation
my
like it,
gosh.
it was fabulous. And I was just loving it. So of course, as this technology
Yeah.
becomes more available, I guess, to the regular Joes of us here, yeah, I'm excited for that kind of stuff. Being able to feel like you're sitting in the room with your loved one. I think that's amazing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think when I look at it, I'm really excited about how do you connect the dots, right? Like how can we make it easier for people to like not just know like this item was important or this photo was a part of a family history, but how do you ensure the story stays with the actual item? And that's where I think there's, you start talking about, well, a couple of years ago, is the whole like NFTs, right? Like the digital transferable assets and doing that. And that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. But I'm really curious to see like where does technology go that allows us to ensure, that the story and memory are paired with the actual object and it's not lost, 100 years down the road.
Right.
Um, and that I think that you think about how storage is so readily, like digital storage is so readily
Hmm.
available these days and how the costs keep coming down. That is exciting. Like right now, with Artifacts, we're using QR codes, but I'm always asking your team, like, what's next? What's beyond the QR code? Like, what's that going to be? So I'm super excited to see where that goes. I think there's so much, if we can figure out how to connect those dots, that's when I think it's that the story becomes like everlasting or evergreen. And that's what really excites me. Another kind of forward-looking question we've got is what's either one or a popular misconception that you think people have about legacy preservation? And what would you say to change their opinion or change kind of their thought around legacy and legacy preservation?
I think there's a couple things. I think, first of all, that when people hear the word legacy, they think big and overwhelming. I think it's a shutdown word for a lot of people. And so, yeah, I definitely want people to understand how small it can be and how easy it is to actually start.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's the first thing. And I think, I'm just thinking of misconceptions. That would be the biggest one, actually, I think, is just making sure that people understand that it doesn't have to be a ginormous, overwhelming project.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be your name on a building somewhere, right? Like that's, I think we have these conversations and
Or
people are
that
like,
it's items and it
yeah,
doesn't, it doesn't have to be, people think legacy equals the things, the
yeah,
things. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be the things. It can be the values. It can be the
yes,
stories. It can be, something that you used to do that carries on in the next person. Like it could
yeah,
be anything. So the word
yeah.
triggers for some people, and I wish it didn't.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I even just to kind of have fun, but also it was just I think for me it was a big part of it. So my mother, a big part of her legacy is food and cooking. Like her love language was food. So I once wrote, I think it was last year, a couple years back, I wrote an article like, can my legacy be chocolate chip cookies? And it was fascinating. Like the responses poured in that, like, why not? It certainly can be. And that's, to me, I think that's a big part of legacy. Like it carried on from my mother. I'm now kind of our family, well, keeper, but definitely the family cook. And my daughter, our youngest, who, is a teenager, she already, like that chocolate chip cookie recipe, oh my gosh, like she knows it by heart. Her friends all know it and have copies of it. And like I have no doubt that what started with my mother is definitely going on several generations down the road with the stories attached to it. So there's, again, like legacy doesn't have to be this big, to your point, overwhelming, or it doesn't have to involve like tons of financial, oomph with it. It can be as simple as a favorite recipe or a memory or a story.
It's
Um,
funny that you mentioned food because I'm actually right now building a new guided autobiography class that is food memories, right? So it's kind
I love it.
of interesting because yeah, there's so much of our memories are related to food and that connects how that connects with our families. And so yeah, it's funny that you bring that up.
Angie, can people access your guided autobiography classes on your website? How do people, if someone just heard that and were like, oh my gosh, I want to take that class, how do they access them? How do they register for them? How do they find them?
I should have sent something to you. I do have a wait list for them so that as
Okay.
soon as I have, because I do both in-person and online classes. And
Okay.
so I can, when they're on the wait list, I let people know when I've got something coming so that they're welcome to take a peek at it.
Fabulous. How about this for folks who've registered? We will send you a link to those wait lists and a follow-up email with the link to the recording. And that way, if you are super intrigued by like, oh my gosh, I want to do a family recipes guided autobiography class, we'll make sure you can get the link. 'Cause I'm getting a couple of questions about that. So that would be fabulous. Um, all right, folks, we have done the bulk of the talking for the night so far. What questions do you all have? We'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to pop in the chat or use the Q&A function, whatever is easiest or works best for you. And Angie, I think while we're waiting for folks to type in their questions, do you have a favorite memory capsule project you've worked on so far?
Oh, no. It's just impossible. Like there's too much fun stuff. So no, I can't pick one. Um, I think there's some cool stuff, when you start thinking about how individual people are. I think of a purse, a woman, how many women have, thousands of purses and that's just their thing. I was
Yeah.
thinking about using a purse as a capsule,
Yeah.
collecting items in that purse that were very specific to that woman. I just thought, just little ideas like that where I was like, oh, that'd be so cool.
That is so cool. That's such a great, like we were talking about container when we first started the
Yeah.
conversation, right? Like
I mean, anything could be a container, right?
yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. You've just, I think, inspired me and my daughter a project during her holiday break. We do have a question. All right, this may be, all right, Angie, I'm very curious about this one. What is the difference between a legacy project and traditional estate planning? And then also, how does digital storytelling play in modern legacy planning or estate planning? That's a
So
lot.
I do think that legacy projects should be a part of estate planning. For myself, I I've connected both of them so that I have my estate plan, so my wills and my, all of my directives, all of that stuff, I have that all online. And so then I actually also have a vault within that where I'm storing videos, where I'm storing specific, information about uh, legacy projects that I have created for
Mhm.
myself and for my family. And so I do connect the two. For me, I'm an end of life planner as well. So I really think that this is or should be a major part of estate planning.
Mhm. I
Absolutely.
love that. And that's, I think there's, again, we talked about legacy, like the softer side of legacy. Your stories, your memories matter. They should definitely be part of your estate. It's not just the accounts, the property, the tangible assets. Like the softer bits are what I think oftentimes people they want to know, they want to remember, and it's
No matter how boring you think you are.
yeah.
Because so many of us think, "Oh, I'm just boring. I don't have any interesting stories. I've got enough." No, no. When you start getting into prompts, that's one of my favorite things about guided autobiography is that you've got prompts. And so then once you start reading these, you start thinking, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got a story about that." Or when you're listening, you're sharing because we're sharing stories in that class. And so when you hear other people's stories, it triggers stuff for you as well. And you're like, "Oh, yeah." And so people, I find a lot of people come into it thinking, well, I don't really have anything to write about, but they always come out with something. Always, always, always. So,
And that's the beautiful thing, right? Memories beget more memories. And that's where when you start slowly telling that story or slowly remembering that, or even, right, that's the whole premise behind photo reminiscence therapy, right? Like memories beget more memories. Like that photo triggers a memory, which then triggers a secondary memory. And if you're lucky, it keeps going on down the chain. Like that's the beautiful part of it is you just have to, I think, take a moment, pause, reflect, like pick the object, or if you're starting with the capsule, pick the theme, then add the objects and add the stories. We've got a couple more questions in here. The first is from Sharon. How do you suggest converting VHS and other older videos to the cloud? Do you know an economical way to do that?
yes. If you have, there's an economical way to do it if you have a VCR machine. If you do, there are several different brands. I'm trying to think of the name of the one, Elgato, I think is probably the most common one that people will use where it's just a connector between the VCR and your computer. And
Okay.
it's super easy. So yeah, but again, you have to have the equipment to do it.
Okay. And if not, you're probably sending those VHS tapes off to some company to do
Correct.
the digitization
Yes.
on your behalf, which then it gets a little bit past the economical piece of it. So you could always, if you don't have a VCR, you could probably look at thrift stores or vintage shops and could probably still find one there. If Gen
Facebook Marketplace.
Yes, exactly. Facebook Marketplace, eBay. Although I have heard that Gen Z is snapping those up left and right. So oh, and Judy knows probably at the public library. Yes, if your public library has a media room, or sometimes there's some great libraries actually like lend out actual items or machines or
Oh,
tools.
nice.
Yeah, I was reading a story about one in Maine that has an entire lending library of stuff. And it's pretty much any like kind of kitchen type appliance or yard tool or media tool you would need, they lend out. So you could get lucky with a public library. We've got another question from Matt. Beyond personal memories, how can someone incorporate their digital storytelling to support charitable or community legacies?
Incorporate their digital storytelling. As far, I guess I'm not sure I understand. Are we talking about creating like a company legacy? Is that what we're thinking? Or
I'll wait to see if Matt chimes in with that to clarify that for us. Um, Judy, while we're waiting for clarification, Judy did say that in DC there is a digital preservation equipment in some classes. So you could, again, your local public library could be a great resource, Sharon, if you're looking for a way to digitize those VHS tapes and you don't have your own VCR. All right, folks. Any other questions as we wind down tonight? Oh, we've got clarification on that first question. More people who have stories and legacy that can be provided to charitable orgs communities so it's not lost to them. So it sounds like maybe if someone has a personal history or story that may have impact on the broader scale, like any any advice on someone can incorporate their digital storytelling to support
right.
that
I think
broader
it's
narrative.
very community specific. I know I work on campus, and so it depends on what the community offers. So if someone was had been a member of the university, they will often take stuff like that for for future. But it depends on every community on what they have available and what kind of space they have, and do they have someone to curate that information and store it.
Yeah, and sometimes historical societies too.
Certainly.
We recently moved to a small town in New Hampshire, and it's amazing. There's a really strong historical society. They're actually doing an oral history project, a little bit like guided autobiography, but they've asked people who've been residents in the town for 50 plus years. They sent out a series of questions, and they've invited all those people that kind of meet the requirements of 50 plus years in the town to come sit and respond to those questions. So they're capturing that, again, digital storytelling.
That's
Um,
wonderful. Yeah.
and I thought it was really fun. Some of the questions were, it's like, all right, and tell your family history, how you got here, why you stayed here, like the typical questions. But then there were, favorite memory of growing up in the town, or funniest moment, or what was one wild rumor back in your day. So there's the fun and factual, and then there's that more, again, lighthearted, which when you think about legacy, I think a big takeaway for tonight is it doesn't have to be super duper serious or financially motivated. It can be light and funny, and it can be small moments that make a really big impression, small pieces that tell your story. And that's one thing I like about the town is they're taking those small bits and they're telling a broader story, from people's perspectives.
Sure.
So, all right, folks, any last questions before we wind down tonight? We do appreciate you all joining us tonight for our first Evenings of Artifacts of the fall series for 2025. As a reminder, this will be available on the Artifacts YouTube channel tomorrow for re-watching. You can also, if you've attended tonight's session, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording as well. We've put Angie's information to chat. I will repop that back into chat just in case anyone joined late or you don't want to scroll back to the top to get her contact info. So we'll put that in here. So folks, if you've got additional questions after the fact, or you want to join the waitlist for one of Angie's classes, or you want to learn more about what she does and how she helps clients make those memory capsules, please feel free to reach out to her direct. Um,
And I
and
will share my freebies with you as well for the email.
Excellent. Thank you, Angie. That's wonderful. And we hope that from all of us, we hope that you are able to take time in the weeks and months ahead to create those, I think, memorable memory capsules, those memorable moments. And you don't have to try to make it a history project, but you can do it in the present. Angie, any last words or pieces of advice as we wrap up tonight?
Just do it. As Nike says, just do it. Got to get started. Just do one little thing.
I love it. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. Angie, thank you so much for being our amazing guest speaker, and I think really inspiring and hopefully motivating all of us. I know you've given me a homework assignment to do a purse memory capsule. I'm actually really excited about that.
Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, you're very welcome. And folks, you want to tune in next week. We're going to change things up a bit. We're going to be doing afternoons with artifacts. So next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, we're going to be doing a deep dive into how artifacts is used by genealogists to document their family histories and their stories. It'll be a very practical, hands-on workshop style session. So with that, we want to say thank you very much. Hope you all have a wonderful evening or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Angie, thank you again, and good night.